they've talked about a BMF title rematch between Masvidal and Nate Diaz for the end of the year. That's what we've heard the past couple months. Recently, though, Dana White said that that's actually not where they're looking to go, and instead they're looking to book Masvidal versus Colby Covington, which is a much more, how do you say, fight that makes sense, I guess, from a divisional standpoint, right? I mean, I love me some Nate Diaz, but that certainly makes a lot of sense to sift out who might get another crack at the belt. So with that in mind, one, do we think this is going to happen? And two, who takes that fight if it does happen? Because that's a big one. So Drake, I'll start with you.
I think that it absolutely has to happen. I don't know how you don't give Colby that fight afterward. I mean, it makes way too much sense, man, especially compared to the opposite of that, which is that Nate Diaz rematch, which makes no sense whatsoever. Yeah, Jorge just lost, but like, dude, that fight was not competitive. That fight really shouldn't have been made in the first place, aside from a fun, BMF, aspect to it. That it didn't make sense in the first place, and it really doesn't now. It really doesn't now, with how everything's shaken out since then, how the fight went and all that. Yeah, he lost via cut, but he wasn't gonna win anyways. Yeah, I mean, Colby versus Masvidal, that writes itself, dude. That's a huge fight to make. And a logical fight to make. Most importantly, as the purist that I am, I love logic in my fighting and in most things in life, really. But yeah, that is absolutely the fight to make. But unfortunately, man, I just cannot see Colby losing to anybody that isn't Kamaru Usman, Gilbert Burns, or like Leon Edwards. These guys, all four of those guys, they're the big four, I think, and they all have very similar styles, right? Of course, Masvidal is in that mix technically and all that. But in terms of who's beating who, I think those guys are the only ones that are really going to give each other any trouble. And I think Covington would just do what he does to essentially everybody. He's grind down Jorge. Maybe he will strike a little bit just because, or a little bit more than usual because, there's the rivalry there and he wants to prove a point, try and knock out Journeyman George, whatever he wants to call him. But I just don't think it's a great matchup for Masvidal. Maybe a little bit better than opposed to other people because he does know Colby better than most will, which that's what makes the fight the most exciting, right? Is, man, will he be able to land another flying knee or something like that, against this guy who talks constantly. But man, just on paper, I think it's going to be tough for most people to beat Colby that don't fight somewhat similarly to him, like those other guys I mentioned. But yeah, it would be awesome to see Jorge get another highlight reel like that.
Yeah, I can't imagine people wouldn't love to see another highlight reel of that, especially given Colby Covington's haters. I could easily see a lot of people loving another flying knee knockout by Masvidal there. Drake's taking Colby. Matt, do you agree? Do you think it's the right matchup to make?
It's the right matchup for sure. Because of the storylines, the ATT ties and the ATT fallout, all that kind of stuff like that. That's a beautiful pre-fight package you can put together right there. Boom. Like you said, it sells itself. Not too much has to go into this for any type of like extra promotion. It's already all out there for everybody to be hyped up about it, right? Now, even though I thoroughly hate this character of Colby Covington, I will have to agree in that there's maybe 2 or 3 people that beat him in the division right now. Obviously, the champ does. Gilbert Burns could probably get at him. Leon Edwards. Masvidal would be an interesting matchup just because of the history. But one guy has, 14 losses. The other has 2. And usually when that happens, there's a reason. And Colby Covington is the guy that is the endless gas tank, always in your face. I'm going to pressure you. And we saw Masvidal have a lot of issues with that in his last outing against Usman. So I would pick Colby Covington to win purely from an X's and O's standpoint. I would be cheering on Masvidal, I guess, if I had to pick someone to cheer for in that fight, because I'm not cheering on Colby Covington to do anything except for stop fighting and stop, being racist when he talks. So that's how I feel about it. I mean, you got to respect Colby's game inside the cage, though. He's a relentless pressure fighter, and that breaks people. So I would have to go with him to win that type of matchup against Masvidal for sure.
Looking at Colby Covington inside the cage alone, right? It's hard to not say he's in that elite class, like he said. I'm with both of you guys. Maybe 2 or 3 guys beat him. I'm surprised, as the unofficial Khamzat Chimaev news network, that you guys didn't mention Khamzat as a possible person that could beat him. But that being said, no, I mean he has looked phenomenal since his last loss to Warlley Alves back when he got caught in a submission. Since then, he's looked basically unbeatable except for Usman, and I think Leon and Gilbert gives him a run, and that's pretty much it. Especially Masvidal. I like Masvidal a lot, but he's always had issues against wrestlers, right? It's not like he's been able to beat every wrestler that's come his way and then Usman gave him trouble. It's that he's always struggled with that. So I think Colby, unless Masvidal lands a sweet shot, I think Colby ends up just grinding him out for however many rounds it takes and gets a decision win. Now, the one thing I will say is, for the BMF belt 2 rematch, whatever, I understand the UFC standpoint from a money perspective. If you get Nate Diaz back to the table and you have Masvidal only coming off of a loss against the champ, you're going to get casual fans involved in. You're probably going to do more pay-per-view buys than you would Covington versus Masvidal. And if Covington beats Masvidal, I don't think that BMF 2 belt is going to have that same sparkle. Not that it had sparkle to any of us that actually follow the sport or like Logic or anything like that. But it's one of those things for the casuals. They're going to say, oh, he's lost a couple now. It's not the same as compared to, he's only lost to the champ and that was on short notice. I'm sure they'd play that right up. And then they'd say, oh, well, Diaz only lost because of the cut. You know how we've all been in this space long enough. We know exactly how they'd package it. So I think that it's interesting that they would go Covington versus Masvidal instead of that BMF 2 belt. My guess is Nate Diaz wants more money and they're not giving it to him, or it's a negotiation tactic. But I also wouldn't be surprised to see BMF 2 get booked out of nowhere when the dust settles. But if we get, I guess there's no point in going over predictions because we've all said that we expect Covington to win this fight. Now, I have seen a couple of people say that this should be a 5-round fight, because I believe there was some rumors that this was going to be the co-main on the Burns-Usman fight for 3 rounds. Do you think 3 or 5 rounds makes a difference here? Does that make a difference for either one of you?
I mean, 2 additional rounds gives Masvidal more time to land something, so in that regard. But ultimately, I think the outcome is the same regardless, with Colby probably getting the decision. Hasn't proven to be much of a finisher. Jorge's proven to not be a guy who gets finished very often as is. So I think either way, Colby Covington decision. But yeah, of course, I think his chances go up with 2 rounds because he's got a pretty good gas tank too. We saw him hang in there throughout the whole Usman fight. Didn't really seem tired, even though he was getting grinded on the whole time. And, I think Colby might bring it to him a little bit more because his pace is just relentless. But either way, I think he's got good enough gas to, manage for however long a fight can go. So yeah, I don't think it matters really.
Yeah, I have to agree that. I think the longer the fight goes, I think it's better for Colby. But yeah, if it just goes to a 5-round decision, you're looking at best case scenario, Jorge is on the wrong side of a split decision again. It's back to that whole sort of thing that's kind of ridden his not early, but middle of his career. So I think the longer the fight goes, the worse it is for Masvidal. I think 3 rounds would be beneficial for him, just because he could go out there, try to land a big shot, maybe try to stay on his feet, and if he can stop some takedowns, he could probably score enough to win some rounds. So the longer that Colby has to keep coming forward, that's better for him. So I would think a 3-round fight's more beneficial to Masvidal, but I still think Colby beats him regardless.
Yeah, I think Colby wins it. I'm gonna side more with Drake on this one, just because I think either way, Colby gets that decision done most likely. And 2 extra rounds gives Masvidal a couple of extra opportunities to land a big shot. I think we're all in agreement here, though. It doesn't change much. I mean, I feel like I know the answers already, but the last question I have on this is, does the winner of that get a title shot over Leon Edwards? What do you think?
Well, it depends, I think, if Leon does anything in the meantime, right? Like if he finally gets another fight and can win that, it's like you can't give him anymore. Come on, guys. So that's if though. So assuming that doesn't happen, I don't know. I think that even if Masvidal wins, I think it's too fresh still seeing him, how clearly he got beaten by Usman. I don't know if you can necessarily do that. They could of course make it happen, but it just, I don't know. It's too fresh. I think, MMA fans have such short memories. They're going to remember that and, kind of call that out, even as much as we love Masvidal and everything. But if Colby wins though, that fight, he's created all these arguments about it already, that the stoppage was bad and all this stuff. And I mean, the fight was amazing as is. It was longer ago. I think there's much more of a case. He would be on a 2-fight winning streak then if he gets that win. So I think Covington could get it because, I mean, what they were they were talking about it a little bit after Colby's win already, if they could give it to him next or whatever, because the Burns fight is not official yet or whatever, but it was being talked about. So I think Colby has a much better chance if he wins. Of course, they could do whatever they want either way, but I think Colby's the most realistic to get it. And that's assuming nothing happens with Leon and him not fighting or whatever.
Yeah, and looking at the potential matchups that we have for Leon, obviously they're, potentially working on the Stephen Thompson fight. I think that's a fight that those guys are going to get banged up. So if that happens, within 2 months, whoever comes out ahead on that's going to be off on the shelf for probably another 3 or 4 months, just healing up from that type of fight. So yeah, if Colby goes out there and wins in the way that I expect him to, which is just basically put Jorge on his back and then just dominate that type of fight, whether it be like a grinding out type of fight, I think it would look a lot like the Woodley fight, but obviously with Masvidal returning a lot more offense. But yeah, I think Colby goes out there and gets a win. He already has that dominating win over Woodley, like I just said, off the loss. So you have 2 dominating wins in a row. It's kind of hard to deny him another title shot, especially considering the gimmick and the Trump support and all that kind of stuff, Dana being buddies, yada, yada, Trump talking about Colby. Yeah, of course, all that stuff's going to go right in line. Or maybe it doesn't, because if Trump isn't in office anymore, who knows what could happen after that. But purely from a competitive standpoint, I think you have to put him in there. And with Leon, unfortunately, just on the outside looking in again, because if Leon ever goes out there and knocks out Stephen Thompson in the first round, which Leon Edwards is not that type of fighter, he's going to get passed up over again.
I think that last point kind of sums up my feelings on it, unfortunately, if Covington goes out there and gets a decision, you've got the bad blood, you've got their fight, back in December, which was very good. I mean, it was an amazing fight, right? So it's hard not to say there wouldn't be excitement. Of course, there's the bad blood between them already. Depending on politics, you've got the president calling Colby and doing all that. It could be a massive thing. If Masvidal wins, I think the only way he gets it done is by a flashy knockout, which is going to look better than a Leon decision, which is what I'm expecting from Leon. So I think that winner's probably going to get the shot unless Leon just somehow goes out there and, lands a Superman Pettis punch, knocks out, Thompson and gets a KO for the first time. And I can't even, when was the last time he finished someone? 7 fights or something like that? Before he lost to Usman, I'm pretty sure. Right? I'd have to look that up, but it's been a long time.
It's probably Seth Baczynski, which I don't know if that was before or after.
Yeah.
11 seconds though.
Yeah, it's unless he turns into that, Leon. Yeah, I'm sorry, Rocky. I think you're probably sitting on the sidelines again. So, but don't worry, because I'm sure they'll match you up with somebody else. Like, I don't know, Khamzat Chimaev, maybe. Who knows?
Hey, this is CNN, okay?
Yeah,
the Chimaev News Network. So
Chimaev News Network. Yeah,
there you go. We're pumping him up, man. We got to get him in this title picture quick by any means necessary.
Oh yeah,
I'm waiting in the wings. Hey, you put in Michael Chandler as a backup for 155. Chimaev needs to be a backup. for everything at the top 5 170 right now.